Face front non-believers. Today we have a special guest host and writer, the author and actress Indra Zuno. Ms. Zuno was taking a few classes at a university in Southern California, which were going well until she ended up with an instructor who was not only promoting false claims like vaccines cause autism, but even gave the class an assignment where they had to pick from pre-selected Tedx talks that the instructor really enjoyed to write a paper about. So Indra, being the wonderful skeptic she is, turned this assignment into a well-researched critique that is shockingly the only genuine critical analysis I could find about the numerous false claims from best-selling author Lissa Rankin. You will quickly understand why it is shocking that no one else has bothered to point out the very obvious false claims, bad research, victim blaming, and general toxic optimism that is soaked into everything Lissa Rankin has ever produced. Enjoy.
Can the mind really heal the body? And if so, is there any scientific evidence to convince skeptical physicians like me? So if you find this surprising, if you have a hard time believing that the body can heal itself, you need look no further than the Spontaneous Remission Project, a database compiled by the Institute of Noetic Sciences of over 3,500 case studies in the medical literature of patients who have gotten better from seemingly incurable illnesses.
Dr. Rankin begins by making the argument that the medical establishment has
gotten arrogant
and thus has lost sight of the power of the placebo effect, the importance of nurturing aspects of our lives, such as healthy relationships, healthy professional and creative lives, and healthy environments. She narrates a story about 3 girls who were delivered by a midwife in the Okefenokee Swamp area of Florida on Friday the 13th. The midwife allegedly pronounced the babies hexed so that one would die before turning 16, the other before turning 21, and the third before turning 23. Dr. Rankin states the first girl in fact died as predicted, the second died the day before her 21st birthday, and the third, aware of the hex, showed up at a hospital the day before her 23rd birthday, hyperventilating,
begging them to make sure she survived. She wound up dying that night.
Upon researching this story, I found that this case was presented by 2 doctors at a clinical pathology conference in Baltimore in front of 200 students in 1966. I could not find the original paper. All I found was an article published by the Herald Tribune in 1966 in Baltimore, Maryland. What the article says is that a Baltimore woman told her doctors at City Hospital that she would die within 3 days, and she told them the story about the circumstances of her own birth and the other 2 girls. The woman said the first baby was killed in an automobile accident the day before her 16th birthday, and the second girl was killed by a stray bullet the day of her 21st birthday. The woman herself died in the hospital 2 days later. The autopsy showed several serious physiological disorders, and the immediate cause of death was primary pulmonary hypertension. But the doctors agreed that her terror may have hastened her death and that a patient's state of mind can be translated by the body into physiological disorders. Now, very importantly, the article states that the doctors who presented this case could not verify the veracity of the woman's story, when the truth is, there's no evidence they even existed at all. And even if the Herald Tribune article is true, would Dr. Rankin suggest that it was the power of suggestion that got the first 2 girls killed by a bullet and a car accident?
So the 3 hexed girls are an example of the nocebo effect, when the mind's belief that something bad is going to happen in the body then comes to manifest.
Another one of her claims is that bald men grow hair when given placebos. I tried to find peer-reviewed articles supporting this. I found one study in which the placebo used to grow hair yielded the following results. 13% of the participants minimally improved, 0% moderately improved, 0% significantly improved. The researchers of another study found that the placebo group had neither moderate nor dense hair regrowth. A third study basically showed the same thing. Placebos don't make your hair grow, but they might make you feel like you've grown hair, which is exactly what the placebo effect is. A patient is given a placebo, told that it's real medicine, and even though it does absolutely nothing, the patient feels better, which, depending on the problem, might be a viable treatment in and of itself. So for example, If your patient is experiencing pain or stress, a placebo effect might be a functional solution. However, if your patient is experiencing pain or stress because they have cancer, the placebo effect might be able to alleviate those symptoms, which is a good thing, but won't have any direct effect on the cancer that's killing them.
I'm going to pause the video for a moment. I think Indra has done a wonderful job taking critical aim at the misinformation that Lissa Rankin has been promoting and profiting off of for years. I just wanted to take a moment to be grateful as a producer and editor that Indra chose to only tackle the single Tedx talk. I made the mistake of opening up Lissa Rankin's book while I was editing this video, and within several pages, I found, forget about the false claims, toxic optimism, and victim blaming for a moment. I found numerous citations that not only had nothing to do with what she was writing about, but often contradict the overall premise of the book. For example, she talks about asthma patients getting a placebo and feeling relief when they were told it would help, but the study she cites is about epinephrine affecting arousal, and it explicitly states the epinephrine had a measurable effect compared to the placebo patients who were in a state of physiological quiescence. I like that phrase. Bit old-fashioned unless you're talking about biology. Oh, did I mention most of the studies she cites are old? Like way too fucking old to be using in a modern book about medicine? And hey, no one outside of hard-ass professors is gonna hold you to the 10-year rule, but it's a huge red flag in the world of medicine and patient studies. But even ignoring that, she somehow uses them incorrectly. Like, if you go back far enough, I'm sure you can find a study that will kind of back up whatever woo you're trying to trick people into giving you money for, but then you just don't. Lissa Rankin is not just bad at research, she's brazenly bad. The only word I can think to describe it is shameless. Like the high schooler who doesn't even go through the effort of stealing or buying a well-written essay, but just make something up off the top of their head and pick some random book's usual suspect style to pad out the bibliography because no teacher's ever checked before, so fuck it! Except instead of passing AP Euro by pretending you've read Kierkegaard, you publish a New York Times bestseller with potentially lethal amounts of misinformation, including the tendency to blame sick people.
And I'm in no way suggesting that anybody who is sick has brought this upon themselves.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then how would you put it?
You know, maybe the illness is something our souls chose to experience in this life so that we can learn what we're here on this earth to learn.
Oh God, that's worse. How did you make it worse? Like, whoa, baby, I'm not saying you asked for all this cancer up inside you, but your sexy ass soul wanted to learn a lesson. Like, what the fuck? I hope that most of you know that the majority of harm that is done to people, especially vulnerable and desperate people, is, until recently, not often done by neo-Nazis who publicly shame intellectual and moral virtues like empathy, but is most often done by people who perpetually smile and preach the gospel of optimism.
Now let's look at her statement, "The medical establishment has gotten arrogant." According to Lisa Pryor, MD, an opinion writer for the New York Times, one traditional view of the medical profession is that doctors are commanding and authoritarian, even arrogant. Though some individuals fit that description, in fact, the profession is built on doubt. Most doctors, especially the good ones, are acutely aware of the limits of their knowledge. I have learned from those much more experienced and qualified than me that humility is something to be cultivated over time, not lost. Our field is built around trying to prove ourselves wrong. Now, what most appalled me is that Dr. Rankin laments that a patient who had been given the cancer drug Cribotien found out that this drug was in fact ineffective. She says that the patient's condition closely followed his belief and disbelief in the drug. Therefore, according to her, what ultimately led to his death was his lack of faith in the drug? Is she advocating patients not be told the truth about a drug's effectiveness? According to a study titled The Placebo Effect, Powerful, Powerless, or Redundant, consensus as to the appropriateness of placebos in clinical practice has not been achieved. At the heart of the matter lies the question of whether deliberate deception of the patient is acceptable in the course of their treatment. These difficulties are illustrated by the American Medical Association's treatment of the issue in their ethics policy. They provide guarded permission for placebo interventions, but only if the patient is informed of and agrees to its use. Dr. Rankin also mentions the Spontaneous Remission Project, sponsored by the Institute of Noetic Sciences, a parapsychological research institute. Parapsychological Research Institute. Oh, enough said about that. Yes, there is evidence that our mental states affect our physical health. For example, a 2013 study titled Adolescent Loneliness and Health in Early Adulthood says that loneliness during adolescence is associated with diagnosed depression, poorer adult self-rated health, and metabolic risk factors related to cardiovascular disease. But our mental states only go so far. The 2007 study, Psychotherapy and Survival in Cancer, the conflict between hope and evidence, concludes that existing data do not support the claim that psychotherapy prolongs survival. We have forgotten that for centuries, patients were given treatments that were either ineffective or downright deadly. Not long ago, mercury, antimony, arsenic, radium, radon, and strychnine were widely used to treat illnesses. And it didn't matter one whit how much faith people placed in these treatments. The results could be horrific. In the 1920s, there was a potion called Radithor, sold in bottles of 2 microcuries of radium in triple distilled water, created by William Bailey. According to Bailey, radium revitalized the endocrine glands and slowed aging. In 1927, Eben Byers, a 47-year-old industrialist, began taking Radithor for pain in one arm. Now, Byers was a true believer in Radithor. 5 years after he began taking it, he weighed 92 pounds, his kidneys had failed, his brain had abscess, he had lost almost all of his jaw to cancer, his skull was full of holes, and his body was so radioactive he had to be buried in a lead coffin. But what about William Bailey, who defended his potion saying, "I have drunk more radium water than any man alive, and I have never suffered any ill effects." Well, he died at 64 from bladder cancer. Although a positive state of mind and an optimistic outlook on life are necessary to thrive, I think placing undue faith in the placebo effect is unwise, as it may result in missed opportunities to use evidence-based therapeutic options. I will continue to rely on evidence-based medicine while also nurturing all aspects of my life. I do agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Rankin in just one thing. She says that patients should have full control of their bodies. Well, I cannot have full control of my body and make informed decisions if my own doctor isn't 100% honest and truthful. As others have said before, I don't want to believe, I want to know. And I wish TED conferences would demand their speakers offer evidence and sources. Thank you for listening to my rant. I do feel better now. Stay skeptical.
Keep your ad blocker turned on because this episode was not sponsored. Thank you for watching, and a huge thank you to Indra Zuno for her talent, intelligence, and infinite patience. I actually shot her segments before I moved to Austin when I found out that producing The Modern Rogue was far more than a full-time job. I stopped producing any of my own content and even shut down my Patreon. A long story later, and I have terabytes of footage waiting to be cut and released, as well as several upcoming shoots. But the first task on my list was finishing Indra's video. I'm glad I did. If you're also glad I did and want to see more work from a skeptical try-hard filmmaker, then please donate to my Patreon and Substack, or even join for free. Now, if perks aren't your thing, swing by my eBay store for some strange items and cool gear I've acquired over the years, including some Modern Rogue memorabilia. Every bit helps. Thank you to those who have already given their support. Bye.